Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm Nick Gray. If you caught my Pixel 6 Pro review a couple weeks back, you probably know by now that I do have a couple issues with this phone and some mixed feelings about it. For those looking for a premium tier flagship device, it does check pretty much all the right boxes. It's incredibly powerful, the price is really good as well, and the software with stock Android is something that I really enjoy. But I do have some issues with this device, and the main one being this right here. Google's own Pixel 6. So let's get into it. There's a lot to like about this smartphone. I really do have to say, after using it for a couple weeks now as my main device, I really love it. But I think the most interesting aspect of this phone is actually the price. Entry-level flagship devices like the Galaxy S21 from Samsung or the OnePlus 9 made their debut at $799 and $729 respectively. Compared to 2020 devices, they were really well priced, especially the Galaxy S21, which was a whole $200 less than its predecessor. But Samsung did cut a lot of corners with that device, especially when it comes to the build materials of the smartphone, and it still doesn't come close to the price of this phone right here. So how much is it? It's just a cool $599. And for reference, that's $150 less than the Pixel 5 that it's replacing, which honestly is a mid-range device that was extremely overpriced for what it was. But that just shows how much value that the new Pixel 6 delivers. This phone is essentially a Pixel 6 Pro without the telephoto camera and a slightly smaller display for $300 less. Honestly, that's incredible value. Now, of course, the differences between these two smartphones are a little bit more nuanced than that, so let's walk through them to see what you have to give up when you go with the Pixel 6. If you watched any of my other reviews, you probably know that I'm not a huge fan of extra large devices. So when it comes down to the size of this phone, the Pixel 6 is definitely a better fit for me than the 6 Pro. But if you're still looking for a large device, this is still pretty spacious at 6.4 inches for the display. Now, the smaller display does come with a couple other compromises as well when compared to the 6 Pro. It does have a lower resolution of 2400 by 1080p pixels and a lower refresh rate at 90 Hz compared to the 120 Hz of the 6 Pro. Now, before you jump into the comments and scream about how 90 Hz is simply unacceptable these days, I really have no issues with it, and it's honestly a really big improvement when compared to other devices that still use 60 Hz refresh rate displays. That being said though, I am kind of a sucker for higher pixel densities than what this phone has to offer, but it's by no means a deal breaker. As far as the positives go though, the display is incredibly bright with great color reproduction, and viewing angles are incredible as well. And my personal favorite feature is that it's completely flat as opposed to the curved display on the 6 Pro. Of course, this does cut down on unnecessary glare and also improves the typing experience since you don't have to deal with those curved edges. When it comes down to performance and Google's Tensor chipset that's used inside of the Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro, you're not going to be able to find any difference in performance between these two devices. It does lag a little bit behind the Snapdragon 888 if you're running benchmark numbers, but I really haven't noticed a difference in the real world when using this device or any other device with a Snapdragon 888. Gaming on this phone is absolutely phenomenal as well, and the Tensor chipset does keep up really nicely, as is multitasking and other day-to-day activities. Of course, some hardcore users are going to point out that this phone only has 8 GB of RAM. Yes, only 8 GB of RAM, which is probably inadequate for some for heavy multitasking. But after switching to this phone from the Pixel 6 Pro that has 12 GB of RAM, I haven't noticed any difference whatsoever. Unless you're really keeping track of how many apps the phone reloads in a given day, you'll be perfectly happy with how the RAM on this phone performs. One of the main attractions of this phone is that it's running a stripped-down version of Android with updates coming directly from Google. It's honestly the vision of what Google wants Android to be in the real world. Now, if this review had been published right when the phone came out, I would have left things right at that. But if you've been following along with the news, you're probably aware that Google's been having a few issues with updates that it's pushed out to this device over the last month or month and a half. I'm not going to get too deep here, but I do want to point out that Google's updates have had their fair share of issues, especially with the Pixel 6, and that Google does struggle with bugs just like any other Android OEM does. But that being said, there is a silver lining here, since Google does push out its updates on a monthly basis, and sometimes even quicker than that. Their turnaround time in getting issues resolved is substantially faster than what the competition typically delivers. As for Android 12 itself, it's definitely the most significant update that we've seen to the operating system in 4 to 5 years from Google, delivering a brand new aesthetic over the entire user interface and a whole lot more customization and personalization options than we've ever seen before. There's also a lot of work that's been done under the hood to improve things like security, like the ability to give apps an approximate GPS position rather than locking in on your exact location of your smartphone, control over turning the microphone and cameras off on a system level, or simply showing a system level icon whenever an app does access the camera and the mic. And then there's the little things as well, like extended screenshots, and like we've seen on a lot of other devices over the years, one-handed mode, which was sorely overdue, and more than a dozen new widgets with their ability to dynamically change colors, just like the app icons can, based on the color of the wallpaper that you choose. Android 12 simply feels fun and fresh, unlike some of the other updates that we've seen from Google in the past. But I do have to say, there's still a lot of polish that needs to be applied, which I'm hoping is going to roll around once Android 13 hits this device later this year. When reviewing a Pixel smartphone, the main thing that most people really want to know about is how the cameras perform. While I'd like to say that the new phone is leaps and bounds ahead of the competition, the truth is, it's honestly really not. If you're not familiar with the specs, the Pixel 6 sports a brand new 50 megapixel 1 over 1.31 inch sensor with laser autofocus and optical image stabilization. Compared to the Pixel 5, it's definitely a step up. It delivers a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera on the back as well, and then there's an 8 megapixel selfie camera up front. For those keeping track, the selfie camera didn't get that same upgrade that we saw on the Pixel 6 Pro, and the back of the phone is also missing that 4x telephoto camera as well. Now, there is a $300 price difference between these two devices, so I'm willing to live with the fact that the Pixel 6 only has 2 cameras on the back. But I do think that Google made a huge mistake by keeping that same 8 megapixel sensor on the front of the phone for the selfie camera.
Really, for the Pixel 6, the only real disappointment that there is with the selfie camera, and that's not due to the photo or the video quality, but just the resolution for recording video, since it's still only limited to 1080p, while the Pixel 6 Pro was upgraded to 4K. It would have been really nice if Google would have upgraded the sensor on this device in order to give you that higher resolution.
That being said, it's still one of the best selfie cameras out there for capturing still photos, thanks to Google's computational photography that delivers incredible shots. So I guess at the end of the day, it's not all bad. But of course, the main highlight is that new 50 megapixel sensor that's being used for the main camera. If you're expecting a dramatic leap forward in the quality of the images due to the new sensor, you'll probably be a little bit disappointed here. When comparing images to previous Pixel devices, you will notice slightly sharper images and a more pronounced depth of field due to the size of that new sensors. But Google's computational photography really hasn't changed that much. The photos still look incredibly good in nearly any lighting condition, thanks to its auto HDR mode that delivers dynamic range that's even better than what the human eye can see. But while the photos may only be slightly better than they were on the Pixel 5, the new sensor does deliver a significant improvement in video capture. Yes, the Google Pixel 6 can finally rival video capture capabilities of Samsung's flagship lineup. But Google's also applied its own computational photography algorithm to its videos as well, improving contrast, sharpness, and dynamic range. It's honestly a night and day difference when matching up video samples from the Pixel 6 and comparing them to previous devices like the Pixel 5. You'll definitely notice the differences here. The phone also comes with Google's neat little photography features like Magic Eraser that will automatically detect people or objects in your shot that can be easily removed with a single tap of a button. And then also there's the motion blur option as well that will add a little bit more life and movement to your shots. But honestly, these are just Google photo features that are exclusive to Pixel owners since they've been ported back to previous Pixel devices as well. My only real disappointment on the camera front is with the field of view of the ultra-wide camera. With its 114-degree field of view, it's not quite as wide as the 120 to 123-degree lenses that we typically see on other devices. You simply can't fit as much into your shot as you can with most other smartphones, and the perspective isn't quite as dramatic as what it could be. The images and the videos captured with the ultra-wide camera still turn out really good, but if you are coming from a device that does have a wider lens, you're definitely going to notice the difference. Overall, the cameras on this smartphone are absolutely spectacular when you consider the price. Google has really set the bar extremely high for the competition with a device that can go head-to-head even with the best ultra-premium flagship smartphones that are on the market that cost $300 to $500 more. It's honestly extremely impressive. And that brings us to the last item on the list, and that is battery life. The phone's equipped with a 4,614 milliamp hour battery, which is more than capable of getting you through a full day without breaking a sweat. On average, the Pixel 6 left me with roughly 20% charge when plugging in it at night after a long day with about 14 hours off of the charger. As far as the charging speeds go, it's pretty slow when compared to pretty much any other phone that's on the market from a Chinese brand, but it is in line with what you would expect from a Samsung Galaxy device, taking roughly 35 minutes to go from 0 to 50%, but then taking an additional 60 minutes to top it off all the way to 100%. And like a lot of other flagship tier devices, the Pixel 6 doesn't come with a charging brick inside the box. So if you don't have one, you will have to spend a little bit of your own money in order to get one to charge the device. The good news is though that the phone does support wireless charging, which is a feature that we typically don't see on a lot of other smartphones priced at $600. So that's a nice touch from Google in order to make this device stand out even more. If all you're doing is looking at the spec sheet when comparing the Pixel 6 Pro against the Pixel 6, you'll definitely be disappointed. But the phone's $600 price point is really what makes it stand out, especially when looking at the Pixel 6 versus the other competitors as well. Now, it may not have all of the bells and whistles, but it definitely delivers the best bang for your buck even now in early 2022, making it my #1 recommendation for a smartphone under $1,000. It's honestly just that good. And that's going to do it. Be sure to leave a comment and let me know what your thoughts are on Google's Pixel 6 and whether or not it's good enough to compete with ultra flagship devices that are currently on the market. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.